Thank goodness we got that trap door secured. You may have heard that noise previously. Anyway,
Yes,
welcome to
especially with
the.
No, perfect. Keep going.
Well, you started talking. Welcome to the Black Magic Tree House, where it's always October, except for today when it's actually October. Um, actually, the intro that I was going to use, I'll go ahead and do it anyway. Welcome to
Yeah,
Black
yeah, go ahead.
Magic Treehouse, the podcast where we discuss the horror media we consumed as children that hollowed our weens. My name is Eric, and with me is my illustrious co host, Jose. Hi, Jose.
Hi. I like the first one better.
I would say that I'm not even trying with those intros anymore, but to be honest, I don't know that I was ever trying. But I think that's the fun of
Well, the
them.
first step is honesty. Yeah, absolutely. We're just kind of come up with them on the fly just to get them over with.
So,
So, Eric,
hey,
you made mention. Yeah, hey, hi. You made mention just now that we mainly talk about on this show the horror media that we consumed as kids. But today's topic, I think, is actually from the more recent past. Is that not correct?
sure, why don't you just micromanage everything I say?
I don't want to say that that was micromanaging so much as being an attentive listener and a good wingman, kind of calling back to something you said. You're welcome.
Must be
Sure,
those
be that way
improv
about it.
skills paying off. So here's the
Yep.
story. Ever since we started this podcast, I would go to the thrift store with my girlfriend, and there's two things I look for when I go there. One of them is old film cameras, and the other is children's horror books. I always go over to the section. Oftentimes they're mixed in with the YA, which is annoying, but um, and I actually found something because I said before on this podcast that I it's difficult for me to imagine if like anthology horror series in the vein of Goosebumps could succeed today because I think the literary trend started by Harry Potter and continuing through I don't know anything genre is to have like lore that you build on book after book. But I think I found a series that is relatively recent that is indeed an anthology horror series. Um, Jose, you're more in touch with.
The youths.
Well, because of your job, I should specify.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
You are surrounded by the delightful laughter
Wow, it's getting worse.
of little tykes.
Oh my god. So,
So
yeah, to clarify what Eric's saying, I work as an elementary school media specialist, and so yes, the literature of the now with regards to our youngest readers is something that I try to keep abreast of as best as I can professionally.
abreast.
Abreast, yes. I regretted that as soon as I said it.
So have you heard of this series? The issue, well, the I don't know entry of which we are talking about is the fifth in the series, was published in 2012, is called Creepover. Is that anything you had any former knowledge of?
A little bit because I did see some of those at the public library where I worked prior to working at the elementary school. I'm not sure, like, if the official title is "You're invited to a creepover," or that's just kind of like the catchy tagline on the front, or if it is just simply creepover. But in any case, yeah, the creepover series, I just kind of saw them in passing, and I gleaned from looking at the handful of them that okay, this is an anthology horror series, uh, like my beloved Goosebumps and all the others from my own youth, and they appear to be ghost written by one or several authors because each book bears the pen name P.J. Knight, which I find very delightful as far as pen names for children's horror authors go. Of course, I'm thinking back to things like, and I didn't have any exposure to this series. This is just something I've learned of in later years, especially in doing this podcast. The Graveyard School series by Tom B. Stone.
Hmm.
And I gotta admit, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. There's a handful of others um, that I can't remember, but Tom B. Stone does come to mind. So PJ Knight, I feel like is cute and kind of not as aggressively jokey. I don't think anyway, not as aggressively jokey as a Tom B. Stone kind of feeling, or I'm thinking of like Paul Bearer from the wrestling, the wrestling world. Undertaker's little toady, Paul Bearer.
Is that a real person?
Uh,
Or did you just make that up?
no, I did not make it up. It's a character from,
Oh,
WWE
all
world.
right.
Yeah, no, seriously. We just watched videos of Undertaker intros, and yeah, Paul Bearer was like his straight man, I guess you'd say. Yeah. So, not
Does
as
he also wrestle or?
no, he's just a character who comes out in his little mortician, suit and tie, and
Hmm.
he basically looks like a horror host of old. Like this is a rotund gentleman, mustachioed rotund gentleman who looks like during the day he forecasts the weather on the local news station, and then at night he puts on the vampire cape and he's like, "Doctor, suck your face off," or whatever clever name he goes by while he's introducing horror movies. That's kind of Paul Bearer's vibe.
All right. I didn't know that was a thing in wrestling that you just had a guy who didn't do anything.
Yeah, like a handler, just for kicks. And I don't know how prevalent it is. My wife is, believe it or not, more the pro wrestling fan than I am, so I don't know how common that kind of thing is, either then or now. But yeah, at the very least, he existed at one point in time.
Do you remember when they did that? Like, I don't know if you call it a stunt, but there was like some plot point where Vince McMahon's limo got blown up, and like people were like, "Oh my God, he's dead for real." And I was like, "Come on, professional wrestling fans,
uh,
you have to be smarter than this if you want people to take this
it's
seriously."
an art. Also, this guy just got killed on primetime TV. Which, sad as it is, that is something that has unfortunately happened in some cases. But anywho, yeah. So this book,
Creepover number
number
9.
9. What's it called?
You're invited to a creepover. And I want you to know, Jose, this is a story so scary, it broke the creepometer.
I saw that. That's really charming.
Given that this is the first of our 2 Halloween episodes we'll be dropping in the month of October, I pretty much chose this book knowing absolutely nothing about it except that the title is No Trick or Treating, Super Scary, Super Special.
I didn't realize it was a super scary, super special.
Hey, well, I guess it wasn't then, since you read it and all.
Yeah, no, it was just a regular ass book to me.
And the cover is, I really like the illustration style. It's like a little cartoon, like not anime, but just like very deliberately cartoonish, where these, I don't know, preteen girls, I think they are like rendered like they're dolls, kind of.
Hmm.
And it's portraying a moment in the story where they're at this sleepover playing light as a feather, stiff as a board. And you can see the one who's dressed as a bride is floating, and you can see through her white dress to the hands underneath her that are holding her up with their fingertips.
Yeah, the illustration style is pretty interesting for this type of book, I feel like, especially from I feel like this is something that maybe you see from a smaller publishing house, but this is Simon and Schuster, and yeah, the vibe almost kind of makes me think of this is probably inaccurate, but kind of like oh, what'd you call it? Spray paint art, like something you'd see on the side of a van.
Yeah, like
Would you say
very like
that's?
airbrushed looking.
Yeah, yeah, but in kind of a grungy way, as opposed to when you hear airbrushed or whatnot, you think kind of like perfect and precisely rendered. But there's yeah, like I really like your comparison to dolls. They really do look like these little doll people, yet they're meant to represent human characters.
And just in case you're wondering which creepometer this book breaks, um, you can see it on the back. It says creepometer 1, sleep like a baby. 2, sleep with one eye open. 3, hide under the covers. 4, sleep with the lights on. And of course, because this story broke the creepometer, the needle is all the way past 4 into the forbidden zone. And I guess I'll go ahead and read the back of the book. Here we go. What's being kept hidden in Heaton Corners? City girl Ashley McDowell is beginning to adjust to her new life in a small farm town when she starts making plans for Halloween. She is shocked to find that no one in Heaton Corners celebrates it. Ashley is determined not to let that stop her, so she convinces her friends to join her and go trick-or-treating for the first time. But Ashley soon discovers that there's a reason why Heaton Corners doesn't do Halloween. A reason so haunting and so terrifying that Ashley will never be the same. Which is true. There's nothing lying about that synopsis.
Yeah, and also I appreciated how, spoiler alert, by the way, this has not been the norm in previous episodes of the podcast, but Eric and I have actually both read this book, so we
Oh, yeah.
are both abreast. Yeah, hey, how about that? We are both abreast of all the events that transpire in this fun little middle grade chapter book.
It's a
Um,
historic occasion.
so what the heck? Yeah, it is. I was gonna say, what the hell was I saying? Oh, yeah, I was gonna say that I appreciate not only that the synopsis on the back cover of the book is accurate, but the artwork rendered on the front accurately depicts a moment that takes place in the story. How about that?
Oh, yeah, you're right. I didn't even think about that. Um, So when I first picked this book up, like I said, I wasn't sure it was an anthology series. So my assumption was because this is on the back, it says it's about a girl who just moved to this town. So I was like, I wonder if every book, maybe it's about different, like Fear Street, basically. Like, is it take place in the same neighborhood? And you'll see like the same characters crop up in different stories, but everyone has a different protagonist. But based on the little preview they give you in the back, of the next book in the series, which is called It's All Downhill from Here. I don't think that's the case. I think everyone takes place in a different setting.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing about this series that I gleaned back when I was kind of combing through the handful that I saw at the public library is that even though this is an anthology series, it seems like the thematic link between all these diverse stories is that they each have a sleepover
I was wondering if that was
as
the
being
case.
and in and it's I think it is, which is really strange. I mean, it's not a terrible idea, I guess, but super specific, I feel like. And, kind of if you're kind of hoping to build a readership or to build fans of this series, I can't help but wonder like how does one feel going one from one book to the other in this series, just knowing without a doubt that we're meeting these characters, these motherfuckers are about to have a sleepover. I know it. I can just feel it.
I was wondering when I got to the sleepover in the book, I was like, is this series called Creepover because every single book has a sleepover? Oh, man.
I think it
You know
does.
what? Kudos to you, PJ Knight.
I know, right? I mean, interesting challenge. Yeah, really.
Um,
Interesting challenge to gauntlet to throw
I
to
think
your
it's
authors. It's like, hey, you do something different with a sleepover. I dare
I think
you.
it's a good choice though, because that is like one of the rites of passage of being a preteen, and like a lot of, I think especially, I don't want to gender stereotype. I think especially for young girls, that's like the on the entry into like horror movies and horror interest is like telling stories at a sleepover or watching, renting in my day it was probably like Final Destination. I think now it's like The Purge. I feel like every generation has like a, R-rated horror movie franchise like that's kind of specifically geared towards like preteens.
Yeah, I'd say so. Well, you bring up a good point there about this series possibly, to my eyes, it is kind of marketed to a young female readership. And I say that too because from what I could tell from the other covers and synopses that I read, they do all the books do seem to involve a group of girls getting together for a sleepover. And that kind of raised an interesting question in my mind, just to kind of touch on our own personal experience of, not being young females previously in our past. I was curious, just as far as the concept of a sleepover is concerned, like what is your history, a thumbnail of sleepovers? Did you do them often as a kid? If you did, like were they with family? Was it with friends? Like what did your sleepover history look like?
Oh, it's an interesting question that you say about family, because we
Mm.
all slept in the same bed, Willy Wonka or Charlie Bucket style. Just kidding. Um,
Yeah.
no, because we had my sister and I. My sister's a year older than me, and we have cousins our age. So when we were like junior high, somewhat into high school, mostly junior high, because in high school everybody started, getting jobs and stuff. So it was harder to coordinate. But they lived in Texas and we lived in Illinois. So uh, every summer we would fly down to Texas and spend 2 weeks with their family, and then they would fly back to Illinois. Um, and spend 2 weeks with us. And it was kind of just like a big sleepover, like talking until you fell asleep. Or the one that I remembered, speaking of thrift stores, I sent a picture to my sister the other day because I saw a VHS of the Tom Green show. And I sent her a photo and she was like, haha, I've never watched that. And I was like, what? I sent this to you because we had that day when Emily and Sarah were visiting us and we spent like a whole night like shotgunning the Tom Green show. You don't remember the Slutmobile? Um, and then there was also with friends. I never did like a group sleepover. Again, if I'm stereotyping, I feel like girls do like big party sleepovers. But I would usually just have like a single friend over and we would like just play action figures or video games or whatever. But I think that cut off, because of toxic masculinity and,
Damn it, it strikes again.
heteronormative culture. Yeah. I think it was like you didn't want to be caught having a sleepover with another boy past the age of like, I don't know, 12 or whatever. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that's the way it was when I was a kid. But I think I was also getting tired of my best male friend at around that time too. So maybe that was also partially it.
It's funny you say that last line. I'll come back to that about getting tired of your friend. Uh, for my part,
Oh, he's about to end the
yeah,
podcast.
much in the same way that the doctor ended the life of that poor boy from Uncovered. Oh, it'll just be
Do
a
you
few
hear
more
my tears
moments.
falling on the microphone?
Yeah. um, Anywho, my sleepovers as a kid were predominantly with family members, and by that I mean my maternal grandmother and grandfather. Those are some of my core memories, as the kids say, sleeping over at their house, Friday nights into Saturday. Uh, the Friday nights, would usually be a McDonald's run, followed, well, maybe not in that order, but a McDonald's run, along with a Blockbuster run. And I mean, it was just the best. It's the best feeling in the world being with your grandparents, eating a happy meal, and watching some movie that you picked up from the video store. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. Uh, other nights, I'd have like liverwurst sandwiches with them in the kitchen. Because, yeah, I mean, hey, it's an acquired taste, but they were old, they liked it, they gave it to me, so I'm like, this is pretty cool. It's not bad with mustard. But those were my main sleepover memories. That's, I think, as we discussed in a previous episode, that was how the whole Freaky Stories slash Fox Family Channel incident occurred. It was when, it was a Saturday that I had slept over there and it just sprung up on the TV out of the blue. I also remember watching Oh Yeah cartoons a lot at their house. Yeah.
Mm.
Oh yeah, cartoons.
Yeah, I remember having a sleepover with my friend. We moved when I was 9, so I had like my pre-move friends and my post-move friends. But my pre-move friend, I remember having a sleepover there and watching like the first episode of the Powerpuff Girls on Oh Yeah cartoons and being like, what is this? Because it was not one of the villain was like that hillbilly, uh, what was he
Oh,
even? Not a bear.
yeah.
Do you remember this guy? It was a guy in like
The
overalls
like the
who was
little
like some
yeah, the
kind of
little
anthropomorphic,
top hat, like the purple bear, like with the top hat or a straw hat or something, I think.
something like that. Or like yeah. But I was like, this is a weird show. What are we watching? Yeah, that was the end of that story.
But anywho, yes, it was. I figured that out eventually. Um,
So how
so
did you
those that was the brunt of my sleepover experience. The one non-family sleepover experience that I remember, and the one experience that I think I had was, I believe, second grade. I went to sleepover at the time my best friend's house. One reason I think we were good friends was because we had the same initials, so we were like right next to each other in
Oh,
line, and
Jesus Christ.
sometimes yeah, yeah, Jesus Christ.
He's all of our friends.
Yeah, it was a great sleepover. Um, but no, his name was John. John the Baptist. Just kidding again. His name was John, and I slept over at his place. And I think that's a game, the sleeping over at another family's house. That's a game that is just meant for kids of a certain constitution. And I did not possess that constitution then, and perhaps now, in the sense that I was just too weirded out being somewhere that my family was not, and, being, in a sense, unsupervised by my own family, which I guess speaks to my codependency that I had as a kid and for quite a stretch of my youth. Um, and I just remember that, like, you're eating somebody else's dinner and it's like, oh, this is not the same way we make it, or this is just not something we eat at all. It was just lots of that kind of stuff. Just kind of coming to grips with the fact that, oh, there are other people in this thing called life, and they're not just like cardboard cutouts that surround me, the main player of this drama, and they have their own ways of doing things and their own interests, and this is really hard for me to swallow right now. And I just remember, I think we watched Small Soldiers that night, um, and the next morning I was just so and I was so weirded out by the experience that I remember John and I sitting on the couch, just talking, and I was like full of these feelings. I was full of these feelings of like grief and confusion, and I just had it in my mind that I have crossed a point of no return. I have entered this person's house. I have to like be friends with them forever now. Like I feel like I've signed some kind of social contract that I wasn't prepared for, and I have to like love his family as much as I love my family, and I'm not ready for this. And so like as we were sitting there, you know, I just like broke out and I told him, "John, I don't know if I could be your friend anymore." It's so terrible for me to admit that. And I like broke his heart. He started getting upset. He's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, I just I don't know. I don't know what's going on. This is just too much for me. I don't think we can be friends anymore.
We're from two different worlds, John.
Yeah, we're just, this week this can't work out. This thing we got going on. I've seen I've seen what your baking dishes look like when they have lasagna in them, and I can't unsee that, John. I've seen what your backyard looks like, and that's just not what my backyard looks like, and I don't know how to reconcile those two facts in my little elementary mind right now. And dear listener, I told John that I didn't think we could be friends after that day, and if I'm being honest and if my memory's not deceiving me, I kind of feel like we did start growing apart after that. Because, I mean, how can you, yeah, as traumatizing as what I quote unquote experienced, I mean, how much more traumatizing was it for John to sit there and just have me dump him for inexplicable and probably unexplained reasons? So, John, if you're out there, I'm sorry, and I will never forget that. I hope you have, but I will never forget
Man, that is pretty rough. I don't think I've ever been on that side of the
it.
friendship dumping grounds.
Oh, really? You've
Uh,
you've you've been John, you're saying?
Speaking of being codependent, yeah, I think I stayed too long in a lot of friendships that I should have gotten out of when people were not treating me right. Um, the one guy that I had sleepovers with post move was named Mike, and we had a bit of a checkered history because he was my best friend when we moved there, but he was always very conscientious about reminding me that I was not his best friend. His best friend was this kid named Ricky from before he moved to Lakewood Falls. So there was always a power imbalance that I was always struggling to surmount. I was like, look, he's the friend that I talked about on the episode where we were talking about why we'll never do a Godzilla episode. He was the friend who was obsessed with Godzilla. And I was like, I'll watch the Godzilla movies with you. I'll sit here and page through the Godzilla magazine you subscribe to. And then I met Ricky. He would come over and be like, Godzilla's dumb. You'll never get a girlfriend, Michael. And I was like, why do you prefer this guy to me? So I think growing apart, speaking of growing apart, I think I became very resentful and like didn't leave him as a friend, but just got a lot shittier to him over the years. Like, will this make you like me, you fucking asshole?
Perfect. Oh my God,
uh,
perfect. Wow. Isn't it interesting growing up? Wow, what a wild ride.
but
I
also,
gotta say, returning to, yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
what I was thinking about when you were talking about how it's weird to go over to somebody else's house and see like they do things differently, and it's like a culture shock. Michael's family ate dinner at like 5 o'clock, which was so weird to me because at my house we always ate. My dad like I don't know why, but for some reason my dad like never got home from work until like 8 o'clock at night. So eating when the sun was up was like, this is a weird experience. Is this supposed to last me until I wake up in the morning? And Michael had to ask if he could be excused from the table, and I did not at my house. So that was super awkward sitting there. Michael would be like, "Can I be excused?" And I would just be looking at everybody like, "Am I supposed to ask if I can be excused? I'm not their kid."
Yeah,
So,
exactly. I'm just a guest, so can't I should be
so
able to do whatever I want.
yeah, Michael would get up, and then I would just kind of like moonwalk out of there.
Peace. Thanks for the meal. Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, that is a culture shock. I gotta say though, as far as no trick or treating is concerned, when it came to those handful of chapters where the sleepover or the creepover was taking place, so to provide, to provide a really quick thumbnail, I mean, Eric already did with the back synopsis. There's a new girl in town, Ashley, to Heaton Corners, in Georgia, I presume, because they mentioned moving from the big city of Atlanta
I was
to a little
curious.
farming
I was going to
community.
ask you, did they ever
Yeah,
say what state Heaton Corners was in?
they didn't. I just presume. Well, yeah, they didn't say specifically that it was in Georgia, but Ashley, our protagonist, her sister has gone away to college in Chicago, and I feel like at some point she makes mention of the distance
Yeah.
between them. And yeah, I feel like it was equitable to, her basically saying, "Oh yeah, you moved so far away, from Atlanta and now from us." So I feel like yeah, it's somewhere in the state of Georgia. Who knows? Maybe Heaton Corners is a real place. Maybe it's not. We're not looking it up. Um, but anywho, she's new to town, but unlike how might you expect that plot point to develop, she's not the source of derision from her classmates or ostracization. She's actually welcomed with open arms, and everybody in this rural community actually thinks she's really cool. So she quickly develops a group of friends, three girls, Danielle, Stephanie, and Mary Beth. And Ashley has a birthday, which is on Halloween, and she just so happens to love Halloween. But, dun dun dun, Halloween is not celebrated in any fashion in Heaton Corners, and they have a definite strict rule that nobody is to go out trick or treating on that fateful night. So that bums Ashley out, but she conspires with her friends who have not really had a proper Halloween experience. She says, "I'll invite you over for like a sleepover birthday party, but we're going to use that as a pretense to get dressed up in like our scariest, most ghoulish outfits, and then we will sneak out and go trick or treating, and won't it be a blast?" So that's the premise of the sleepover or the creepover. And I gotta say, during those passages, those chapters where Ashley is preparing for her birthday party slash sleepover, and when the friends initially come over, and it's talking about the pizzas that her dad went to go pick up the next town over 20 minutes away because they live in this kind of podunk farming community. The pizzas that he's going to pick up, she decorates the barn out back with all of their Halloween decorations. They're making plans for what they want to wear. They're putting on the makeup. Later in the story, they're getting, or, some of them anyway, are getting snugly to watch some scary movies on television. During all of those moments, I had such a visceral, and I read this book pretty quickly, so it wasn't like I was taking my time with it and savoring, the story so much. But even in that kind of quickly scanning slash reading mode, those passages just really sparked something in me where I actually found myself thinking like, wow, oh, that sounds like so much fun. I cannot wait to have a sleepover of my own. And then it was just like a big cold splash of reality where I realized, oh my God, I'm a 32-year-old man. I can't have sleepovers anymore. And I immediately got so, so depressed. So a credit to PJ Knight or whoever you are. You really sold me on how fun sleepovers are, and I kind of wish that that I had the chance to relive one. Maybe not this one in this particular story, but man, oh man, that sounds like a really fun time to be alive.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I keep having this idea that I want to like buy a bar or a movie theater, whatever, and make it like 90s themed ish. And one of my ideas for that was like I would like to do a sleepover where it's like you just choose a theme for the night, like whether it be a TV show that you would binge or like a movie franchise, and it would just be like kind of like when those movie theaters do like the 24 hours of horror movies or whatever. But just have people show up with their pillows and their pajamas and just like hang out all Saturday night. Because yes, I also would love. I think now that I have a better sense of myself and better boundaries
Mm-hmm.
that I can draw with people, so I'm not hanging out with people that I uh, feel lesser than. I think adult me
Yeah.
would love to have a sleepover and just, you know, or like there's something fun about discovering like a video game and then just playing that for like hours on end or something, you know? So I miss that too. And getting back to what I was saying earlier about the way girls do sleepovers versus the way boys do sleepovers, I do think a really fun aspect of the book is the way that they get into the party game. Like a group of girls is always just like one, party game away from just becoming a coven of witches, it seems like, which I think is like more, which I think sounds a lot more fun than, um, I don't know, being a boy and just like having to punch each other or whatever, which I never quite was masculine enough to. I had a feeling yesterday of like, sometimes I do something around the house and I'm like, I am the most manly man. I installed a screen door the other day in our new place. And I was like, yes, I have a masculine macho swagger now. But 98% of the rest of the time, I think I would rather be like playing on a Ouija board and drinking wine or whatever.
Exactly. It's like we are just, you know, we may appear a certain way on the outside, but inside we're like Brooklyn witches that just want to sip wine and summon some spirits.
Yeah, it does
Man,
have
that's a Desperate Housewives spinoff that's just aching to be made, I feel. Like a
of
Hex
a.
in the City. You know what I mean?
I feel it. Sure.
Yeah, get on it. That
Okay,
should happen. That
but
show
it would
should
it
happen.
would it be a group of?
Starring us.
Okay, I was gonna say, would it be a group of adult men who are like, I want to, do my hair up and watch scary movies all night?
Yeah, I mean, it just sounds so nice. Come on. We live in a brave new world. Anything's possible. Maybe. So long as there's not a law against it.
Yeah, no, I'm totally for. I mean, I feel like
Anywho.
as millennials, I think we're pretty. There are probably a lot of people our age who are on board with adult sleepovers. But yes, anywho, like you said, um, I noted before in the Spooksville episode that the books all have their own, like the chapter books that came out in the wake of Goosebumps, all have their own variation on like the spooky chapter numbers and stuff. And this book has what I would describe as like kind of a vampire or mummy-esque font for the chapter headings. Like in terms of everything being like like a, what do you call it, a scimitar or something, with like the curved, like very sharp angles or points on these very curvy letters. Very like kind of monsters, I guess. And then across the top of the book, they have, oh, never mind. Across the top of the book, they have like blood dripping down in like elegant swirls and patterns. And as I was flipping through the book, I tricked myself because I thought there's also a pool of blood at like the bottom of the pages, and I thought that initially that the pool of blood got like deeper and deeper as the book went on, like so you could flip through it. But I was just optical illusioning myself. It's the same level the whole way through. But some of the pages do have like a little splash beneath the page number, as if to imply that like the blood dripped off the top of the book and is like falling into the bottom of the book. So I think that's a pretty neat touch.
That is. That's just having fun. Good for them.
Well, in terms of the actual
So in the
story,
course,
yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that's what basically what I was going to get into. So you go.
okay. Yeah. So Ashley McDowell moves into this new town, and you already touched on a lot of the details, but I will say the setting for me was A plus, 10 out of 10. I love Heaton Corners. Um, I love the details like the dad having to drive a town over to pick up a pizza. I grew up in Plainfield, Illinois, which is not as remote as Heaton Corners, but it was basically like a farming rural community that was like gradually getting overtaken by suburbia when we moved there. So it was like, people I met who had lived there their whole lives would tell me like, oh yeah, this when I was, 5 years old, this place was like all cornfields and like one dirt road and one convenience store. By the time we got there, it was a lot more. I don't know if you call it gentrified if it was all farmers that are getting like shoved out of their homes or whatever. Um, but it was just kind of this
Developed.
place developed, sure. But it was like if you go 5 minutes in any direction, you'll find a different type of, I don't know, township situation. Like there was plenty of cornfields
Hmm.
and dirt roads, but then you could also go like there's a Walmart across the street from like the dilapidated barn that's like falling apart in this abandoned field. And then there was like a really trendy downtown area. Like it got increasingly trendy like right before I moved when I was 30. I remember there was like a steakhouse that they built that had like glass columns that were like, blue lighting. It looked very much like something you would see in like Chicago or something. So it was, so what's my point? My point is that Heaton Corners, I think, resonated with the part of me that enjoyed like walking around in the cornfields at, midnight and like not worrying that somebody was going to jump out and murder you or whatever.
Yeah, I was curious to get your feedback on the setting, because the book definitely sparked in the same way that the sleepover bits did. I loved hearing about the town. I loved hearing about their harvest festival
Mm-hmm.
and the abundance of all, the local crops like the apples. Because the thing is, I've lived in Florida pretty much my whole life. That's where I currently live now. And that type of stuff is so utterly foreign to me that it was basically might as well be the stuff of dreams,
Uh-huh.
which, for me it is. Just because I for the longest time, it wasn't until I was in my sophomore year of high school that that I saw real snow for the first time. So autumn in its depiction in the book um, is is occupies that same space for me, where it's almost kind of like this fantastical thing that I have only heard about or read about or seen in movies, and I have never experienced it. So anytime that there is a book that indulges in those seasonal trappings and just the season itself, it can't help but just stir this sense of desire and longing in me. I really crave the day that I can experience a proper autumn. Even if it's in Georgia, even if it's in Heaton Corners, just one state up for me. There have just been so many Halloweens where it's just the weather is utter garbage here. It is just so stinking hot. Um, which I've heard conversely from folks that I've met who like live in who do live or who have lived in places like Wisconsin or Michigan, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it usually snows on Christmas and or excuse me, usually snows on around Halloween sometimes, we'll get a little bit of snow and you can't go outside trick or treating unless you are also bundled up from head to toe." It's like, "Well, that also sounds like it sucks." But Um, yeah, I just long for the day where I can, kind of like we were talking about in the Dollhouse Murders episode. I just want to be able to dig into an apple chiller and, breathe breathe in the wood smoke and excuse me, and stroll through the leaves and do all the, the basic bitch fall things basically, and just love every second of it. I await that day.
Well, you're an adult now. You can move away from Florida.
I can move away. It's easier said than done,
Yeah,
especially when you've got family hanging around and making you feel all guilty,
sure.
either implicitly or explicitly.
Illinois was not, we didn't get snow in October ever, that I remember anyway. But you definitely had to like incorporate long sleeves into your costume.
Which is not the worst thing, it sounds like.
No, I mean, it was fine. It was uh, one thing that I miss about Illinois, because I moved to Colorado when I was 30, and people in Colorado don't really decorate for Halloween. And it was like a pretty big thing where I lived in Illinois. Like people would have the full on, like haunted house in their front yard that they made themselves. And yeah, people don't even do like jack o' lanterns here. Although I will say, probably my best Halloween memory as an adult, at least of Halloween that I stayed at home, because Adana, my girlfriend, and I do tend to travel around Halloween, um, because we just want to see like what would it be like in New Orleans on Halloween. And the best one was Salem, Massachusetts. We went in 2021, which is like exactly what, as an adult, I want Halloween to be, because once I was too old to trick or treat, I never quite figured out, I wasn't popular enough to go to the parties where everybody was drinking and wearing sexy stuff. So, but Salem is like all of the adults who love Halloween because they just want to dress up as something really cool and scary. They all congregate in Salem on Halloween. So
Yeah.
if you and your family ever want to like go rent a house up there around Halloween, well, because there's like a million houses in like Sleepy Hollow, or I mean Sleepy Hollow, obviously I know that's in New York, or in like between Boston and Salem, there are all these like gigantic palatial houses, like 4 bedrooms or whatever. That's like I would love that, but I can't pay $500 a night. So
Yeah. See, I've heard great things about the vibe and the atmosphere and the events that go on in Salem at that time. I've also heard that it is an utter bear to be there as far as traffic and just massive people. So I'm curious. Yeah, this podcast is turning into a travelogue. Won't you join us? We'll get back to the book,
sure,
we promise. But we can even cut this part out. I don't care. But what was your
I probably
experience
won't.
like as far as that was concerned?
Well, we went in 2021, so I think the population was somewhat down from a normal Halloween because of
Everybody
reasonable
dead from COVID.
concerns that people had. Yeah, no, it was people were all packed together the entire time, and nobody was wearing a mask, which I wasn't either. So I'm not criticizing everybody else, but I think we were all just kind of like, whatever, this is worth dying for. um,
Exactly. If I had to, this is where I want.
but I like, for me, the crowds of people were like, it was fine because it wasn't like rowdy, or I don't know. It wasn't like a giant party atmosphere. It was just people really enjoying the atmosphere of all being together, everybody being in costume. It wasn't crazy in any way, because I don't love being in crowds when they're all crazy. And it was funny because my girlfriend was all proud of herself because we stayed at a hotel in Boston, and there's like a commuter rail or whatever that goes from Boston to Salem, and she bought us like weekend, what's this service called?
Uh,
Public transit. She
oh,
bought us like weekend passes for the train, and then So we went to the Boston station and she was like, these were only like $10 or whatever they were. Can you believe it? And we sat there for like an hour at the station waiting for the train to come in. And then the train comes and keeps going. And we were talking to the other people there and they were like, yeah, I think the train is just too full from all the previous stops. So we're all going to Uber there. And we were like, oh, okay. So as far as the traffic goes, I mean, it was like a 40-minute drive. Um, I don't know. Like once we got to Salem, we just walked everywhere because there wasn't anything that we needed to drive to. So I didn't have any problems with the traffic either.
Hmm, good to know. Yeah, that's definitely a bucket list item though, for sure. I mean, I'll
Anyway, to
certainly
get back to
take,
my, sorry,
yeah, anything in the
I'll
Midwest.
close the loop on my, because I started by saying my favorite memory of Halloween where I stayed at home. Because Salem is probably my favorite memory overall. But October of 2020 was, we did like a social distancing trick or treat where we had like a tube on the porch, and Adana's mom was living in this house at the time. So she was sitting on the porch, and whenever people would come up, she would like put a piece of candy in the tube and it would like roll down and then they would like catch it in their bucket. And we had Adana bought like a digital projector. So we watched Hocus Pocus outside, like in the yard while all the kids were walking around in their Halloween costumes. And it was like the most people that I've ever seen out on Halloween. Like, I think probably because of people just being like, I need to get out of the house because,
Yeah.
we'd been living in lockdown for 6 months. Um, so it's funny because like it's the inverse of living in Illinois where it was like nobody had decorated, which they do in Illinois, but also we got so many more trick-or-treaters than I'd ever gotten when living in Illinois. So anyway, that was my boring story.
No, no, not at all. I mean, that's the other depressing thing about Florida, or at least, my neighborhood. Unless you live, it seems like, I don't know if this is true of other states, other regions, but it's like unless you live in a like a gated community or the equivalent thereof, you're not seeing any trick-or-treaters in any kind of quantity. Because that's what everybody does. They go to the gated communities where the houses are closely knit, and the
Mm-hmm.
communities kind of like go all out, to a certain extent. At least some houses do enough to make it feel like an event, so that yeah, you can just walk from house to house to house and get your fill of candy. I was shocked though because last year we actually got 3 or 4 groups at our door for trick or treating, and that's about 3 or 4 more than we usually do in my neighborhood. And my neighborhood is not like desolate of people. There are other young families that live around here, but that just adds to the overall bummerness of Halloween where I live. Not only is it hot as hell, but yeah, it doesn't appear, at least residentially where I am, that there's anybody out there celebrating the spirit of the occasion. So it's very, very sad. Very much in the same way that it
Yeah.
was sad for Ashley in Heaton Corners.
Oh,
See, I'm bringing it
bringing it back
back.
to
I'm
the
bringing it
book.
back. Yep.
I guess I'm done talking about my personal Halloween memories. Anyway,
No, no,
um,
I don't want to cut you off. You can jump in, or find a creative way to rope it in to our next course of discussion. Um, as far as the book
let
is
me ask you this
concerned,
though.
oh, go. You.
So we talked about there's a reason why Heaton Corners doesn't do Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at what point did you figure out exactly what the curse was?
I didn't honestly. So
Oh,
yeah.
I'm
By the
surprised.
way, there's a curse. Well, let me tell you this, and maybe this just says more about me than PJ Knight's abilities as an author or her preoccupations as an author. First let me lay it out for you, dear listener. So what ends up happening is that Ashley goes out trick or treating with her friends, all garbed up as they promised, as they planned, and they come across other trick or treaters, but they seem odd. They're not really talking all that much, and the costumes they wear are very, very realistic. Like the first pair that they run into is a child dressed up in kind of like an old school devil costume, and another child who's dressed up as a bat. And the child who's carrying, or excuse me, the child who's dressed up as the devil is carrying a jack-o'-lantern that's emitting this very sulfurous smoke from its carved face. And the child that's dressed as a bat, I thought it was pretty cool. I kind of love this whole sequence, the whole trick or treating sequence, because
Yeah.
I felt like it built up genuine unease and foreboding in me in the sense that I really didn't know where it was going to go. I didn't know what was going to happen to Ashley and her friends, because it seemed like some heavy stuff was about to go down. Uh, because basically they come to find that, well, or suspect or feel, they just get a bad feeling from all these kids they keep running into. They're not really talking like kids. They're kind of talking in this dazed fashion. They run into a witch and a werewolf near their junior high slash high school. And the witch, it seems like it's not a mask. It's like really her skin that looks so warty, and her fingers really seem genuinely gnarled and long and clawed. And, she's talking cryptically about, oh, I used to like soft things like this costume that you're wearing. And, oh, we'll see you soon. It's
I
genuinely
think she says
creepy.
pretty
Um,
things, but let me.
no, she said soft things. I do remember that.
Oh, really?
because I
That
I thought
creeps me
because
out a
I
lot
thought it
more.
was creepy. Exactly. I thought it was creepy. I'm like, damn, that's good. Nice, PJ Knight. Um, and then Ashley has seen a couple times up until this point a strange symbol that seems to crop up around the
Oh,
town.
shut up for a second.
Which, yep, go ahead, you read it.
We were both right. She says, I
Mm,
always liked pretty things, soft things.
look at that,
Go on.
soft, pretty things. That's an album title right there. Um, so Ashley has seen the symbol crop up on a number of occasions. First on her mailbox post, then on a door inside the town's general store. That at first looks like it's an eight laying down, the number eight laying down. But then she comes to realize it's, and they don't refer to it as this, but I believe the term is the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, well, it's the infinity symbol that's been like crossed with Ouroboros because it has the middle part.
Okay. So yeah, it's a hybrid of the two. Um,
Mhm.
and at first the symbolism or the meaning of this sigil, this symbol is not known. Um, but yeah, that the whole sequence with the trick or treaters out on the street at first, and then Ashley goes up to the house of a boy that she has a crush on, like, oh, let's go trick or treat at Joey's house, and she knocks on the door, and Joey answers the door, and he's covered, not exactly tattooed, just like painted with this symbol on, at the very least, his head. I don't know if said it was like covering his body or covering his face and arms, but at the very least there's one right on his forehead. And then his stepmother comes screaming, running at the door, saying, no, 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 and she slams the door shut on Ashley and her trick-or-treating friends. And that whole sequence is really effectively done, and like I said, it just really sets you ill at ease for what the heck is going on here. So I'm gonna pause and let you talk about that part because I feel like I hogged it all.
Yeah, two things. One, it is maybe important to note that Joey earlier on overheard that Ashley was planning on trick or treating, and he like got really angry and was like, "No, nobody does that here. You can't do that." And Ashley was like, "Well, I thought I had a crush on you, but I guess you're just a big old jerk." So Joey clearly knows something about the insidious nature of Halloween heat and corners. And the other thing was, yes, I do. I thought that this book did a really good job, especially in that trick or treating sequence of, we talk a lot about like when stuff horror for kids makes concessions to the fact that they're writing for kids. And so you wind up with something that's like feels a little too, I don't know, like goopy or just not uh
Yeah, tepid.
but I think the best, yeah, tepid. Um, I think the best solution is just to go full on creepy. And seeing a bunch of kids who look like they're like kind of frozen in time with their like old timey Halloween costumes that are becoming real. Cause I love those old, you see those like old photos shared on like Tumblrs or whatever of like terrifying old back when costumes were made out of like paper mache and stuff, and you see
Yeah,
this
the
just like
burlap
grainy
masks.
old, yeah, they're so creepy and terrifying. And I kind of want to bring that back actually. If I ever go to Salem again, maybe
Right?
I'll make my own like paper mache creepy mask because I love the atmosphere of those old photos. So I think that was a really good decision by the apparently unreal PJ Knight.
I'm assuming.
Because it was like, yeah, because it was like nobody's getting killed here, but it hits that creep factor really nicely. That's like age appropriate, but still makes me as an adult be like, ugh.
Yeah, like it felt dangerous, but not in a way like I don't think that these kids are going to be killed by any means, but what they're encountering feels like there is genuine danger here. Like they're getting involved in something, and that kind of goes along with some of my disappointment about some of the revelations that come about later in the story.
Well, we can go ahead and talk about that. I mean, I don't know that I've. Oh, I will say you talked about the harvest, and there is a small town fair in this book. Like the carnivals come into town, and that's where Ashley goes to meet up with her potential or her crush that she hopes will become more than a crush, Joey. And that's another thing that I love. That's another trope that I love is like a date or a meeting somebody that you hope will be a date at a small town carnival.
Wow, that's right on the head. PJ Knight knew who she was writing for.
Yeah, he or she, because in the
Mm-hmm.
about the author section, they take pains to not use any. It's just like PJ Knight, the author. Um, we've been sworn to keep PJ's identity a secret, and it's a secret we will take to our graves. So that's fun.
AKA, we had to sign some non-disclosure agreements. You don't want to get involved in all of that legalese, though, so we're going to present it in a fun way
Yeah.
for you.
It's funny because I saw the name PJ Knight and I was like, do I remember that name from like a short story in the Bruce Coville's Book of series? Um, but I think I must just be thinking of some other author with initials.
Yeah, they're kind of popular, especially when it comes to this content, wouldn't you say? First
Yeah.
initials, yeah, first and middle initials, followed by monosyllable last name.
Um,
Anywho,
but anyway, I will say, I figured out, I mean, I don't know if you want to go chronologically. I'm not going that way.
yeah, I don't care.
I figured out that the danger was that the costumes were going to become real when I think Mary Beth is the one dressed up as a vampire, and at some point when they're trick or treating, she says something, and Ashley's like, "Oh wow, you sound a lot better," because she has like the plastic vampire fangs. And Ashley's like, "Oh, you can talk a lot better with those fangs. I guess you're just getting used to them." And I was like, "No, they're becoming real. That's what's going on."
Wow, that's pretty good
And
because I didn't clue into that as early as you did. I think it was right around the time that Danielle, who's dressed as a skeleton, it talked about how she had contorted
yes,
herself into her hiding spot and
yeah.
how her bones were creaking.
Oh yeah,
All again, really creepy and an unexpected way. Um,
that was creepy, but it was also kind of funny because nobody reacts to it as being creepy at the moment. In the moment, they're all just like, "Oh, Danielle, you scamp."
Well, honestly, that whole sequence too. So we had, the sequence outside trick or treating when the girls return back to the barn and start playing their games. That whole sequence I thought was handled well in the sense that it just seemed to have a kind of eerie dream logic to all the
Hmm.
events that were happening. Like this feels like something that you would have a dream of happening to you and your friends. But and the fact that here are these girls having a sleepover, but it's not in the house proper where the responsible adults coming to the rescue are. It's in this separate building. It's in a barn. I don't know. For me, it just kind of made it feel isolated in that sense. They are isolated from help. They're kind of in the jaws of this seemingly cosmic, magical transformation that they can't do anything to stop. It's just that, the wheels are kind of inexplicably, or not inexplicably, they're inevitably turning, and they really just have no sense of what's going on. But, uh, PJ Knight doesn't like waste our time with all of those kind of questions that authors make their characters say the things that they think the audience is thinking, like what's going on here.
Why don't we call the police?
But I found the whole like transformation part during the sleepover to be unsettling. Like it was also really well handled well.
Yeah, Danielle turns into a skeleton because she's dressed as a skeleton. Stephanie, I honestly don't really remember what happens to Stephanie. I just remember she disappears at some point.
Yeah, she just kind of up and vanishes, no pun intended, because she's dressed as the bride that they do, light as a feather, stiff as a board, and she does genuinely
Yeah.
levitate at one point, but Ashley kind of like pulls her back down to earth. But then after that, yeah, she just ups and like pops out of existence.
Yeah, I've been praising the book so much. I want to level that with a little bit of nitpicking. Um,
Ooh, me
I
too.
think a little would have gone a long way. Okay, great. I think a little would have gone a long way in the levitating scene because this way it plays out is like Stephanie, they like look up and Stephanie's levitating like 5 feet above everybody's head or whatever. I feel like they could have done just like some, I don't know, some little thing that would have been a little bit like uncanny as opposed to like something that's like impossible to explain, you know?
Yeah, like maybe something distracts, like maybe there's a loud sound and like all the girls look over, like, "Oh, what was that?" And then they turn back and realize they're not holding Stephanie anymore, but she's still exactly where she they left her in midair. I don't know, something like that. I don't need to be rewriting other people's stuff.
No, yeah, no, I think you're right though. Just something where it's like it felt like she left our fingers or whatever, and then they're thinking back on it later and they're like, that couldn't have been real, right? Like we're just making that up or
Yeah.
something. Anyway, but just like an inch or two instead of like, whoa, she's up on the ceiling.
So,
But I'm
you
okay
oh, go ahead,
because
go ahead.
I was gonna say if you're okay, I don't really have that much else to say, so I was just gonna talk about like the rest of the story. Do you want to say more about the sleepover part?
No, not about the sleepover part. Like I said, you alluded to like the whole curse aspect of it, and that's like
Uh,
really where the brunt of my critiques are nestled. So,
okay.
if you kind of wanna, if you wanna catch us up to pace, and then I can offer my comments on that part.
Yeah, so the sleepover culminates with all three girls disappearing from the party at various times. And Mary Beth, who's dressed as the vampire, uh, starts to say, like, I'm so thirsty. Can you get me some water? And then Ashley gets her some water. And then she, like, Mary Beth tastes it and she spits it out. She's like, no, I don't want that. And Ashley's like, what about juice? What about milk? And Mary Beth is like, oh, that all just sounds disgusting, but I'm so thirsty. Please help me. And then she becomes a vampire, basically. So Ashley runs upstairs because at this point they've moved out of the barn into the, I think, basement maybe to watch scary movies. And so Mary Beth is like, Benny Hill style, chasing Ashley around the table and stuff. Like, I'm gonna bite your neck. And then Ashley runs upstairs and wakes up her mom. And then when her mom comes downstairs, Mary Beth has also disappeared. So Ashley is like, uh, I guess all my friends in Heaton Corners don't really like me because they all ditched me at my Halloween sleepover. And then I don't know, I forget the details, but it's not really that important. She realizes the curse is real, so she's like looking for her friends, and then like over the course of the next week or whatever, the teachers at school are like, "Oh no, those three girls, their families all moved away." And Ashley's like, "What? They all three just moved away?" And the teacher's like, "Yeah, I guess being a farmer just isn't the life for everybody." And she goes and looks at their houses and sees that they're all like, it looks like they just left, like nothing's moved, nothing's packed up. There's like food on all the dishes that are like stacked up in the sink and stuff. Like it is like they just all evaporated. So then she goes to this. I don't remember if you touched on what's her name, Miss Bernice or whatever her name is, who works at the local convenience store, and she earlier warned Ashley, like, "You don't want to go trick or treating, little girl." And Ashley was like, "Ha ha ha! Just give me some marshmallow pumpkins, old lady." And then so she goes back to her now because she's like, "I think that lady is the only person who actually knows what's going on in this whole town because she's old." And so she and Joey go over to the general store and get like handed a whole written document that's like, Miss Bernice is like, "I can't tell you anything, but here, read this." And then Joey's like, "Oh, I don't like reading." And then it like outlines the whole story of the curse and how it came to be. Do you want to tell that part? Because it seems like that was the basis of your critique.
Yeah, I'd say. I would say that this whole section of the book, with the exception of I'd say maybe the final note, I was not the biggest fan of just the promise of all of that eeriness and unease that's packed into the trick or treating sequence and the sleepover sequence. I feel like it, as is the case in narratives like this, horror narratives, especially where you're building up all this mystique and all these questions, the answering of the questions just kind of fumbles the ball. And I feel like it kind of fumbled the ball here with this book. First of all, may I say, now I know that this book was not written for me, a 32-year-old person. It was written for a much younger audience who have not been exposed, for the most part, to narratives like this in the abundance that I have over my 3 decades on this earth. Having said that, let me just say how utterly tired I am of curses. I am so tired of curses and curses of this nature. Basically, the written, the written oral history that Bernice has in this book, which is hysterical because she's like, "Here, I don't have the strength to tell you about what happened. Read it." The kids read it, and then Bernice just goes on and starts talking to them about it. She's like, "Oh yeah, so anyway," it's like, well, fuck, why couldn't you just tell us in the beginning? What was the point of giving us this book? But anyway, as the story goes, back during the Depression, 1931, there was a local girl, a local family, the Snowdens, who managed to remain pretty well off despite like everybody else in the town living hard scrabble lives. And their daughter, whose name I've already forgotten because I don't care, I think it was Charlotte. She just lorded her wealth and her privilege over all the other kids. Shoved her luxurious lifestyle in their faces anytime she could, and that was expressed a lot during Halloween, particularly one year, 1931, when she actually had a genuine dressmaker come to the house and design her Halloween costume. She wanted to be a snake charmer, and they had this special order a stuffed or a toy snake for her to wear and to perform with for to go along with her ensemble. Well, the local kids, all these poor Dust Bowl-esque farmer families were just so fed up with Charlotte's selfish ways that they thought, hey, you know what's going to be a really great way to get back at Charlotte that's totally not going to come back and bite us in the ass, pardon my pun, is let's replace her toy snake with a real snake. And that they do, and it scares the pants off Charlotte. Ha! Everybody gets a big laugh out of that. But oh no, Charlotte's not screaming because she's terrified. I mean, yes, she is, but she's also been bitten by this snake, which is, guess what, poisonous. And before you know it, she's on the ground, writhing around, foaming at the mouth, and then she's just dead. Dead from a snake bite. Now, I'm not a herpetologist, so I can't tell you if there's a snake in existence that renders that effect as immediately as it sounded like it did in the story. I feel like snake bites, even the most poisonous ones, would have at least a little bit more of a lingering effect, and there would be at least a little bit of time to attempt saving this person's life, but it sounds like it's a pretty instantaneous, yep, she got bit, and then she fell down, and she died. So that right there is like, lazy, don't care for that.
Yes, I agree with you. But also, I think I've learned to just kind of swallow that because, like a snake, you might say.
Uh-huh.
I read a book a while ago called Poison, a Memoir. I think the author's name is Gail Bell or something like that. And it's a book that's like, it's a really good book if anybody's interested in poison, because she's like relating an incident that happened in her family that may or may not have been a murder. So she's kind of investigating that. And then through that story, she talks about all the various kinds of poisons and, their effects and stuff like that. But one of the points that she makes in the book that always stuck with me, because I read it like 10 years ago, was she talks about how like movies, when somebody gets poisoned in a movie, they're just like, oh, and they fall over, and it's like they just kind of go to sleep or whatever. And she's like, no, there's no poison that does that. That's poison is like, it's prolonged, it's agonizing. You're like vomiting up blood. So every time I see a poisoning in a movie now, that's just like somebody like starting to shake and then dropping the teacup and then just like, oh, and then falling over on a couch or something. I'm like, bullshit. The only movie I ever saw that got it right is The Hateful Eight. Does a really good poisoning scene where everybody is just like vomiting up blood.
Wow, I never finished watching that past the first like 10 minutes. That's just because
Oh yeah,
that's my life. It wasn't like, oh, this movie sucks. Yeah, so maybe
it's
one
a
of these
very
days
divisive.
I'll get to enjoy that. Yeah, it seems like it is.
Yeah, but I think it's one of my favorite Tarantino's, but a lot of people think it's like one of his worst. So
Hmm.
whatever. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about.
You can't please all the people, just like you can't poison all the people as quickly as you want to. So anyway, Charlotte dies, and guess what, folks? That's the genesis of the curse right there. And it's just as if this wasn't bad enough that we have to deal with this kind of curse. It's told to us. All of this is told to us that now the reason that we don't celebrate Halloween and we don't go out trick or treating is because Charlotte, the spirit of Charlotte, who has not made any appearance whatsoever in any way throughout this entire story. Oh, we're pegging all of this on her. This is her doing. This is Charlotte taking her revenge. Because if anybody dares go out trick or treating on Halloween night, they are doomed to, first of all, vanish from this reality, and to only reappear on successive Halloween nights and as happened to Ashley's new trio of friends, to become the costumes that they were wearing at the time that they went trick or treating. So to become all these misshapen creatures and miscreants, and to only reappear once every year on Halloween night on an endless trick or treating route in hell, basically. All of the or most of the houses and hidden corners leave out candy. And I guess that was a nice touch in the sense that it harkens back to the origins of the holiday itself. The whole trick or treating concept came from offerings being left outside people's houses to kind of ward off evil spirits or spirits of the dead, to be like, hey, we realize you're dead. Don't eat us. Eat these soul cakes instead that we've baked for you, please. So that was kind of a nice play on that. I did enjoy that. Um, I'm gonna back up a little bit to go to just say that my anticipation and my expectation, probably naively, given that this is a middle grade book for kids, was that I just got much more of a cosmic, hellish vibe from what was happening during the trick or treating sequence that I just did not really anticipate or want it to pan out to be just like a run of the mill, lazy curse kind of storyline that we ended up getting. Because not only, oh, kid dies very quickly, and now this is the reason why everybody, like like what, like, so just because they die and now their ghost is around, they have the power to basically warp reality.
So how would you have, if you were the writer, if you were tasked to be PJ Knight,
I really
how would you have?
I really wanted this to just be kind of like an inexplicable thing that is was not so that was not so specific to one person or even one event, especially the one we ended up getting. Like, I could just, if they even just went the general route of saying, like, this is cursed land and this is something that has always happened here. Just the fact that they tried to, like, it's kind of similar to, there's a trope in horror narratives that I don't really care for. Um, that you see in, like, did you see the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark movie?
Yes, that's what I was thinking of when you were saying, "Oh, do we really need more stories about curses?"
I hate this thing. Like, it wasn't quite the case in this one, but I hate this thing. It happened in a graphic novel, a scary graphic novel for kids that I read a little while ago, where like in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, it's like, oh, this this outcast, the social outcast is um persecuted and what's the word I'm looking for? Is accused of being a witch, basically. This horrible creature that has the power to do terrible things to people. But as it turns out, it's just like, a family trying to get somebody out of the way or a mob mentality taking over. And it's like, oh, that persecuted person wasn't really a witch. But then the mob or the terrible family do something terrible to that person, and then that person basically becomes a witch slash becomes a monster and wreaks their vengeance on the descendants of whoever or the town as a whole. And that kind of thing just makes me shake my head, like, well, why couldn't they just be a witch or a monster to start with? Like, why are we playing these games? Why are you giving me the runaround where it's like, oh no, it was society that was the real monster. Okay, but well, now look at what they're doing. It's like, what fucking difference would it have made? Like, okay, I guess you're trying to make a point, but I find it really irritating, and it's also not great. Like, it's It's like, well, this person had something terrible happen to them, so clearly now you understand why they made a pact with the devil to slaughter like an entire lineage or an entire town. It's like that kind of sounds worse than what happened to them. So I'm not really sure who you are wanting or expecting me to align my sympathies with here, because this is all bullshit. I don't know. Did you get
Yeah.
that feeling at all?
I get that feeling sometimes. I will say Paranorman kind of does that, but I remember really liking
Mm-hmm.
Paranorman. So maybe I just saw that before I started getting witch fatigue or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, well, it's not quite the same because, but like there are so many like Italian horror movies from the 60s and 70s where it starts out with the flashback, everybody wearing these like Party City medieval costumes. And then they like bring the witch out. And then they always give the witch time to be like, in the name of Satan, I
Yes.
place a curse. And it's like, no, just kill her before she talks. You're
Yeah,
creating
like don't
problems down the line. Scary Stories was probably the first time that it bothered me in that because I think it maybe for me it's the difference between using that as what I guess it would be the opposite of a Deus Ex Machina, like as an origin story, just as a plot point versus having the movie thematically be about that thing. Do you know what I mean?
right.
And that's kind of what it felt like in Creepover is that like, yeah, there's no depth to Charlotte Snowden as a character. And maybe there could have been, but that's not what the book is about. So it did just kind of feel like we just wrote this down on a toilet paper roll to explain the history of this town. Here you go. Bye.
Really, that is, it felt so rushed, while at the same time that, everything post Halloween night in the book kind of felt like it also dragged. Like it's like, okay, yeah, we know they're not really that they didn't really move away. It's like, oh, we have to go through all these motions.
So what if? Let me ask you this, because I think it was last year I rewatched Trick or Treat with
Mm,
my girlfriend because she'd never seen it, and she wanted to. She was like, "I've been seeing." My girlfriend crochets, and she's like in with the crochet community, and she was like, "I keep seeing this Sam Hain that people are crocheting. Do you know what that's from?" And I was like, "Well, let me educate you, my sweet little darling." Like the patronizing ass that I am. But anyway, so we rewatched Trick or Treat, and I kept thinking as I was reading No Trick or Treating, maybe because of the similar title, I kept thinking of the segment where have you seen it?
hmm
Yeah, the segment where they're like pranking the girl who dresses up as a witch, but they give you the backstory of the kids in the costume like before the actual stuff
Right.
happens. Do you think if they had done something more structurally like that in this book, it would have worked better for you? Like instead of building up to it
Yeah, I mean, just
as a
like it.
mystery?
Yeah, like it was trying to play it off as a mystery to be solved. But when you have like so much rich material just in, like we said, the trick-or-treating sequences, the transformation sequences, that is enough to fuel your engine. You don't have to play these games of who's leaving the strange sigils behind and where did this mysterious necklace come from. I thought it was from my sister, but it was sent to me by
Yeah,
somebody else. That was an interesting point too. Miss
especially because that never really pays off.
Right. I,
Anyway,
I was gonna say, Miss Bernice actually tosses it off as like, oh, that sign doesn't do anything to ward off evil spirits. If anything, it just tells you who in the town believes in the curse and who doesn't. But then I thought to myself, well, then why do you have it on the door to your creepy little room back there?
well, bearing that in mind, because you could cut out all the Miss Bernice story and still have the same epilogue that you actually get at the end of this creep over. How did you feel about that bummer?
So having said all that about, well, I did not care for the story to pan out this way. Honestly, anything. I would have skipped from like Halloween night to when they arrive at the general store and skip the part with the book. Don't care about the town's, history archives, historical archives. Um, just get to the part, or yeah, just like cut that out entirely. Like when Ashley first encounters Miss Bernice back at the general store, Miss Bernice just kind of like realizes what happened, that Ashley was essentially the cause for her friend's disappearance because she didn't realize just what powers were at play here in Heaton Corners. I would have loved it if that whole last chapter, instead of being like an explanation for this dumbass curse origin story, instead if it was just them talking to each other. Like, this is just how it works here. The spirit realm gets close to the living realm on Halloween night. And this was a lesson that I learned decades ago when I took my own friends out. And now I'm here as a survivor and I visit them every year and there's nothing you can do about it. That would have been perfect for me. That would have been perfect because I do think the way it ended was actually really brave and different.
Mm-hmm.
For like, I was surprised that it ended on such a bummer. Um, did I need it to flash forward to old Ashley at the general store? No, I didn't. I could have done without that. But just her leaving the general store and like hearing the whispers of her friends telling her that they miss her and like seeing, like, I thought, when she sees like she's like at Danielle's house and she sees like the flash of the skeleton around the corner, like peeking out from around the corner. That immediately made me think of Laughing in the Dark.
Overrated.
Sorry. But like with Zebo's cigar smoke coming from around the corner of the house.
Cigar smoke?
That's what it made me think of, but I thought that was so creepy because it was like this broad daylight moment where, oh, I think I see my skeleton friend, but then she just kind of flits right out of existence again. That would have been the perfect ending to this story for me if it just kind of ended with a conversation between Miss Bernice and Ashley about, this is something terrible that's happened. There's nothing that anybody can do about it, and you just kind of have to learn to live with it. Kind of like our friend the Babadook that we talked about in the previous episode. You just have to learn to live
Yeah.
with this. It's not going away. Um, and then just her kind of walking solemnly back to her farmhouse with the ghosts of her friends, whispering to her. That would have been the perfect ending for me. I didn't need all the extra crap.
Yeah, I like that because then you could make Ashley's first encounter with Miss Bernice. Miss Bernice could have like the reputation of being like the town kook, like she's the old lady runs a general store, and then Ashley comes in and she's like, seem like she's in the back room and you hear her speaking, and then Ashley goes back there and is like, "There's nobody in here. Who are you talking to?" And Miss Bernice is like, "Oh, nobody." And then at the end of the book, she goes back to Miss Bernice and she's like, "I know who you were talking to."
Mm, yeah. See,
That's my pitch.
why aren't these agents and editors tapping us to write these books? I don't know.
I think of that every single time I read a YA book. I'm serious. I'm always like, I could cut out 200 pages of this for you, tell you what these relationships need in order to have chemistry between these two romantic leads, tell you how to make the plot actually work, tell you how to structure it so it doesn't just seem like a whole bunch of crap happening that doesn't have any coherence. But,
That's just not our lives right now. Maybe one day.
but yeah, I like the I like the idea of Miss Bernice being a tragic figure instead of just like just like having the encounter with her where like she does the same thing that like every other adult has done and be like, "Don't you celebrate Halloween, I'm warning you."
Yeah, the foreboding old person.
Yeah, she could like try to warn them and Ashley doesn't take her seriously because she thinks she's crazy, and then after all this shit goes down she's like, "Oh."
Yeah, yeah, that kind of made me think, kind of like a Home Alone turn.
Sure. Da,
You
da,
know
da,
it's
da.
true.
Oh wait,
Yeah.
is that the Grinch? I think I got the Home Alone
Da,
with the Yahoo
da, da,
Dorin,
da,
but
da,
yeah,
da,
that one.
da, 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 da.
Yeah, she
Okay,
looks out the
anyway.
window where it snows in Halloween and Heaton Corners and sees old Miss Bernice trudging along with her pack of demon friends behind her.
Yeah,
Da,
and
da,
her
da, da.
and all her cats instead of pigeons. Well, that's that's no
That's the
trick or
book.
treating, I think. That's the
Yeah.
book right there, as I live and breathe. Overall, I would say I enjoyed it.
Hmm.
I think I might give another Creepover a try. I think I might see what else PJ Knight has in store.
Pajama Night. Uh, yeah. I mean, I think the strength of it was definitely the atmosphere. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and because this says it's a super scary, super special, I wonder if the regular books, because this one clocks in at 191 pages. So I wonder if the other books in the series are like more Goosebumps length, like 110 to 120.
Right. Yeah. That's the Creepover version of a super chiller, right?
Oh, I had something I wanted to say though, because I feel like I owe our audience at least one hot take per episode.
Oh boy.
So my hot take today is I don't think John Carpenter's Halloween is a very good Halloween movie. Sorry.
Mm.
But I said I thought about Trick or Treat a lot while reading this book. I also thought about the moment in the Halloween franchise that to me is the most evocative of the atmosphere of Halloween, which is the opening credits to Halloween 4. Do
Yes.
you know what I'm talking about? You're
Yeah.
nodding along.
I've seen them shared across multiple like Facebook friends pages. Like nothing lives up to like in this movie or in some cases other Halloween set movies. Nothing lives up to this opening credit sequence from the fourth movie.
Man, that's absolutely true. Yeah, it's just atmospheric shots of like the wind blowing over like cornfields and farmlands and abandoned barns at like sunset. And there's like the silhouette of a weather vane and a close up of a scarecrow and just like, pumpkins.
Just chilling on a tractor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, this is, to me, it's like, this is what Heaton Corners looks like in around Halloween time. It's like perfect encapsulation. So,
Yes.
anyway.
I would say that is true of the first Halloween movie, though. I would say that for me, for whatever this is worth, this is going to sound strange. A lot of people, myself included, when you want to get the Halloween vibes, you seek out either in IRL in real life, Halloween decorations that kind of explicitly call to that holiday, reference that holiday. Same for movies that deal in it, you know, Trick or Treat versus John Carpenter's Halloween as far as like decorations and atmosphere go. It's not a close match whatsoever. But I will say that in John Carpenter's Halloween, this probably sounds strange, but I have these vivid memories and associations that I make with the autumn time for whatever that's worth here in Florida. But I have specific memories tied to the autumn time that have that basically boil down to be succinct about it, darkened houses. Not exactly in like a skinamarink fashion, more like just like the setting sun, overcast skies. I have this memory of reading a novelization. I had a pair of two Universal Monster novelizations, like paperback for kids, one of Dracula and one of The Wolf Man. And I just have vivid memories of reading those in the living room of one of our houses and smelling my grandfather's cologne as he was getting ready to go out dancing and hearing Roy Orbison on his record player. And it was just that was autumn time. And so now I also associate Roy Orbison's voice with the autumn time. Just the house being kind of naturally lit by the setting sun and seeing the shadows creep in the corners, that makes me think of autumn, and I think that vibe is pulled off very well during the latter half of John Carpenter's Halloween. Like I just think of the shot of Michael at the top of the stairs, and you basically can't like see any any part of him except just a vague outline because the shadows are creeping everywhere. And for some reason, that just more than like the fire-hued leaves, or the little kids out with their buckets saying trick or treat. That encapsulates the autumn for me, and I guess that's indicative of the fact that I have had such shitty autumns here. I have nothing else to go on except just the nights kind of creeping in like that. So there you have it.
There you go. Yeah, maybe I just have a bug up my butt about it because I was actually raised in Illinois,
Nah.
and Halloween, supposedly takes place in Illinois and looks nothing like Illinois in autumn. So I'm like, fuck this movie.
What? You don't have palm trees in Illinois?
You got me.
Yeah.
Every street corner has a palm tree.
When
you're hiding from the cops, you carry one in front of you.
Yeah, exactly. Good cover. Well, I would say that we'd probably place this one in the time capsule, yes, for future reference, future enjoyment.
Oh, do we still do that?
Do we still do that? I don't know. I mean, we enjoyed the book, folks. Is there really more you need to know? Yeah, we had this thing where we'd say we'd either stick it in a time capsule for, future enjoyment and reference, or we'd just put it back in the bargain bin where we got it from. But yeah, I'd be curious to maybe check out at least one other Creepover from PJ Night and see how it stacks up to this one. But I would say for our purposes, this being an October episode, I think it got the job done as far as giving us those precious Halloweeny vibes.
Halloweeny.
Mm-hmm.
Why couldn't Mr. Ghost get Mrs. Ghost pregnant?
Stop it.
He had a Halloween.
Stop it. Yeah.
Bringing it back to my intro that I'm keeping in, even though you told me to only do the other one.
Well, that's it for us, folks.
We have some kind of sign off? Okay.
That's the sign off. My being tired of these terrible Halloweeny jokes. That's it. That's what's doing it for us.
Bring back adult creepovers, millennials. Also, check out our Instagram, Black Magic Treehouse Pod, and email us if you have memories of reading Halloween books or something. blackmagictreehousepod@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.